So, okay, I'm not going to get into comparing charts. I see them too. I see his and I see Young's together. We did Young's. So this is his chart. Okay, so the sun having to be different, but still wanting to be in relations, wanting to be related to, wanting to be appreciated by others, having people sharing his ideas, sharing his confidence that he's a special person that way, and he was. Okay, so now it's a funny mix because when you see, we got this now, Uranus and the Taurus. When you in Uranus and Taurus is seemingly contradictory thing. You have the Taurus liking beauty, liking comforts, liking things, and Uranus exciting it and making the lifestyle different, more eccentric. Still, there's the need for the comfort and the style and those things. There's still all those sort of things. There's need to have an exciting, independent type. There's an avoidance of boredom. There's a need to see things. It's hyper. So there's a hyper quality to him. So even in that hyper quality, it's opposing ascendant with his sun. He's going to try and keep serious, keep it hidden, keep it private, and yet he's still really hyper and interactive and attentive to anything that would be affecting him, and whether he liked it or not. So when we get to his Mars, it's the key. It's a big key here. Mars is the handle of the bucket, a real strong focus. All the other planets are reacting to others, taking in input, but Mars is in Libra, wants to be nice, wants to be pleasant, wants to be appreciated. And so that's in its detriment. It's not the strongest, most aggressive Mars, but it's a little more socialized. But still, it is moving towards the greater dark. It's trying to do things for others. It's up in the thinking quadrant of trying to of rising up to status. He didn't want to prove things to others, to peers, to others, and he was very competitive in proving things to others, proving what he valued and what he saw and how he valued things and how he could see these complexes, these neuroses, and proving it to others. And as he shared his radical insights, he was challenging, he was challenging and confronting other people. Like, it was not in a bully type of way, in a more idealized type of way, but he did challenge the ideas of his peers. He brought about psychotherapy. And put insight into all madness isn't exactly madness, it's just frustration or unfairness. So his Mars, that's in the 11th house, needing to prove things to others. That's kind of pushed. It's an ambitious push. It's not for ambition, it's just a need to prove the point, I'm not going to sit back, I'm going to make, if I can't get it here, I'm going to get it. So he would always be trying to come back and make his point and prove his things, prove his ideas. That's the Mars there. It's squared by Saturn. That's inhibited, hardworking, serious. He didn't like, there would be controls he tried to work within the system. And the system was threatened by him, but he still maintained his academics thing. He still did his writing, and he still got it was working to get it respected, and it's just grown through his lifetime. But there were difficulties. But the Mars also opposed Jupiter. So yes, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, T-square. The Jupiter opposing Mars exaggerates. I got to do this. It exaggerates. It increases the aggression. The Saturn puts a lid on it. I got to do it. Wait a second. So he would always be chomping at the bit, like wanting to go and having to control it. So that repression, he was disciplined around his Mars, around what he was doing. He could control what he was doing, what he wasn't doing, or it could be controlled. There would be a defensiveness around it. Well, that very defensiveness goes against the nature of his desires of Venus and Aries. Go for it. I want to get this. I want to get. Whoa. So around work, I want to do this. I want to do this. Nobody's listening. Having to have the fight for the work for it. But Jupiter, Saturn is the one planet, two planets that don't really have a bad aspect to each. When it's a square, the Jupiter understanding is. Jupiter is always wiser when it understands responsibilities. So when it understands responsibilities and what duties are required, then it can guide Mars in a responsible way and keep it out of trouble. If you don't have Saturn to the Mars, if you don't have that discipline, there's a tendency to get too rowdy and too aggressive. So he was passionate but not rowdy or aggressive. but certainly he's competitive, but seriously so. So this was the Mars, Scorpio, I said his identity would tie into the Mars of this, it would go on this, but he's pushing against, with pressure, with discipline, against resistance. So if someone held him back, he's going to decide, I got to push further. Saturn's holding him back, or some restrictions holding back. The Jupiter's exaggerating. He said, no, we got to fight this, got to go after this. So like, he'd always have to, and then he'd be trying to prove it in an intellectual way with the air sign on it. Prove his ideas are strong. So he was forcing his ideas. They were radical, but he was forcing them into the establishment. And there's his T-square. There's a big struggle. But that's a very disciplined factor. Serious disciplined factor. It's very different than the moon Gemini squared Neptune and the sun in Taurus. So all the charts reacting, but this one side is trying to push. He's running, his pushing, but it's serious, and it took effort to do it. Okay, so we're on this. We go right to the, so that's the 11th house. The Jupiter in the 5th house is understanding, like the Jupiter's the 11th house of friends, society, lovers, not lovers, friendship, peer pressure, and and peer pressure. Jupiter's in the house of children and lovers. So his understanding of sexuality, of like a parent's restricting what you can do, and your attitudes and what you can do and what you're not, and how it can affect you getting what you want, the Venus and Aries. He had an understanding about childhood repression and anger and aggression. And his understanding was tied into it, so it pulled into a lot of his sexual theories. But it wasn't just simply looking at sex. He was seeing the Saturn restrictions. He was seeing the understanding of what's too much, what's too little, having to go for it, and he was feeling those direct forces all the time. And he could see how he would put things in. He'd see who would be affected by him and how. He would pick up on it. That's interesting. Okay, so I have Saturn in the 8th house of social values, of trust. The moon's there, being very independent. The Saturn's there, being very restrictive. So on one end, you got the Freudian slip and the running through words to get the deeper concepts to try and get a sense of it. On the other hand, you have serious repressions and restrictions and controls on resources and on trust, on social position. It's not position is your 10th house, but who you attract and how well you make and what you try, how you try money. There was the restriction around other people's money, or seriousness about other people's money, or social causes. There's a limited side to the Saturn, the Jupiter, and the Mars. It plays out his social energy, defensive above the horizon, pushy, defensive, personally aggressive, having to keep a lid on it. Okay, and trying to understand between the performance of the 5th house and the social responsibilities or repercussions of performance. When you're going to perform, how is it going to affect other people? How are you going to be affected by other people? So he takes in things seriously, and then he looks at it uniquely with the moon in Gemini, and then it's this. So his way of processing, seemingly paradoxical, was who you would meet outside. You'd meet the Scorpios and the Mars, and you'd meet his energy putting out like that. You feel it, but he's not going to show it. He's going to be very responsive. But in his responsiveness, there's a seriousness and a control. The Saturn there, the Pluto in the 6th, there's a responsiveness and a control that's very unique. So these are the two things. He responds, but he wants to do something. He wants to do something. He can see what people want to do against all the things we're taking in. So what are you taking in? Repressions, other people's judgments, things about money, about sex. Is also the 8th house, about the trust and the sharing. So there's a Saturn there and the moon there. So they would be much more inhibited if they were closer together. But because they're apart, they're both in Gemini. They both function, and they're two different streams of thinking: the serious and the curious. And it gets processed by his Mercury. And he sees how other people are serious and curious or not. So, okay, from there, like I said, we're not defining, we're just tuning in to the different facets of this jewel, of his horoscope, of his uniqueness. It's not the map of sexuality, it's not the map of, it's the map of your individuality, your uniqueness, and your potentials, like the DNA of your life. So, okay, we're going to see his Uranus in the 7th house. We talked about it. It's in Taurus, it's conjunct the sun. It's in the 7th house. You would think unconventional relations or need a certain amount of independence in relationships. But it, Young had that too. But the independence in relationships, this came in a very wanting to be acknowledged and seen as different or as unique, or having his own unique take on things. He was married and steady and fixed in that marriage all his life. Well, in a way, so was Young. So, but this need to be excellent or to be unique was very strong. And I think there was the contrast between how he was with his peers and how he was with his family. Okay, so the Neptune, the confusing element, the mystical element, that's down in his 4th house. He had deep confusions, deep sorrows. Something was not as it seems from his roots. Even though his IC is in Aquarius and he's motivated by knowledge, there's still puzzling things about his roots that would unsettle that knowledge. So he would get the guilt, the sorrows, the confusions from families, from dependencies, from codependencies and complications. As they affected him, they would come down against his structure of what he knows and how he does, and he would be rationally trying to know how to deal with this. And then he would project what he knows intensely. But he wouldn't project, he would just have that, he would have to know about it. So that draws him in. But the Neptune brings the confusion from home, from family. It squares the moon, the family. So the trust between parents, the fantasies about mom or dad, like these Neptunian haunting things deep in his depth was there. This was the fuel that fed the concern over dreams and what they meant. Okay. And the Pluto, we talked about it again, it's in the 6th house of health, of helping people in traumas, of working through your own traumas emotionally. Venus is there, but having to control things and deal with things so harshly or truthfully, realistically. Go into the problem, go into it, solve it. So there's, as you would think of this, he would be challenged by these things. They come up, and that challenge would force him to adjust and work it through.